You probably heard a lot of good things about the MG82 already. Probably its insane TTK, but that's not the only thing that makes this gun so great. So let's break down all this weapon stats in today's video. The MG82 is a high rate of fire weapon that puts out a good amount of damage in a very short amount of time, similar to the Modern Warfare MG34. But where the MG34 fails with this role due to its low mobility, the MG82 destroys everything in its class. As always, we're going to be breaking down the stats with the meta attachments. So we're going to be using the Agency Suppressor, the 16.4-inch Task Force, the Axial Arms 3 times, the Field Agent Grip, and the Airborne Elastic Wrap. If you feel like you don't need the ADS time, you can definitely swap out the Airborne Elastic Wrap for something like a 120 round magazine. But I wouldn't recommend that, and you'll find out why in a minute. So let's break down the stats, starting with mobility. Its ADS time isn't the greatest at 370 milliseconds, but when you compare it against Cold War and Modern Warfare LMGs of the same class, you'll find that it's aiming down sights 80 to 100 milliseconds faster. And since it has an open bolt delay of 32 milliseconds, that plays a major role in beating every single other LMG. You'll even be able to aim down sights just as fast or slightly slower than many Cold War long-range assault rifles. At 6.75 seconds, the reload time isn't the greatest, but it has the exact same reload time whether it's empty or you leave one bullet in the mag. And it has 100 bullets in its magazine, so this isn't too bad. Its movement speed though is 274 meters per minute, which is actually pretty good and will beat many long-range builds. But its sprint speed is 327.3 meters per minute, which means you're probably not going to be running around with this thing out. Its ADS strafe speed is pretty low at 1.33 meters per second, so don't expect to outstrafe your enemies in a fight. And its sprint out is 350 milliseconds or 480 milliseconds if you're tac sprinting. The reason this is so long is because of its open bolt delay. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. For a long range build, a stability of 2T isn't the greatest, but once you start firing, you're not going to notice, and we'll get to that when we're in the recoil section. Its bullet velocity was a little hard to calculate, but I believe it is around 1250 meters per second, which is extremely great. And its rate of fire is an amazing 15.11 rounds per second, or 707 rounds per minute. When we add up all the points, we get a mobility score of 28. Its recoil is just straight up. Although, because of its aiming stability, it will move a bit to the right and then a bit to the left, so just be ready to correct that. Because of this extremely easy to use recoil pattern and no side-to-side movement whatsoever, it gets a score of 49. It would get a 50 if it had just been a little bit shorter. So for its damage, which you probably already heard a little bit about. In its first damage range, so under 38 meters, it has extremely great TTK, and its head specifically, and only if you're comparing against other weapons, only getting headshots, it's not the greatest, but it's still competitive. But everywhere else, it'll beat pretty much anything. And after 38 meters, it will just destroy anything in its second damage range. You will be downing people before they even know what hit them because of your great velocity and recoil. Just remember that you had to add an open bolt delay of 32 milliseconds if you both start firing at the exact same time. So it gets a damage score of 95. And when we add up all the scores, we get a total of 172. To put it into perspective, the last weapon that got a score this high, although it did score higher, was the FFAR back from launch all the way to January. The only thing stopping this weapon from getting an even higher score is that thankfully they lowered its mobility. I'm not saying that its slightly nerfed mobility excuses this raw amount of power, but I am saying that it could definitely have been worse. So because this weapon is so similar to the MG34, let's compare it directly. So as you can see, other than sprint out and stability in the mobility section, the MG82 gets much higher score than the MG34. In its recoil, you can see that its magnitude is almost the same, but there is no side-to-side bouncing with the MG82 like the MG34. And for damage, they get the same score, although that's because they even each other's numbers out in final points. In a head-to-head battle, the MG82 would win because you're more likely to get upper, lower, and limb shots when you're actually fighting, not headshots. Is the MG34 balanced? I'm not entirely sure. I don't use it, and I personally wouldn't use it really, but the MG82 right now does not feel balanced. Either they need to do something about its recoil or severely nerf its ADS time, because seriously, how is this ADSing 120 milliseconds faster? Right now, this weapon isn't really balanced, so I expect a nerf coming soon, and use it while you can, I guess. Normally, I have a section on how to use this weapon properly, but this one kind of speaks for itself. You can't sprint around with it, so you're obviously going to have to be sprinting around with a secondary weapon like an SMG, and when you do see a long-range target, just swap to that and melt it instantly, because that's what it will do. And it doesn't really have to be a long-range target either. As long as you're prepared for that open bolt delay, and you just pop out of cover, then there's pretty much nothing an enemy can do. It's a almost perfect long-range weapon, and it's just way too good. So enjoy while you can. I guess the only one way you can't really use it is trying to use it like an SMG, because its open bolt delay and its sprint out times will never be competitive enough. So stick to anything outside of SMG range and you'll have a great time. But that's the MG82. Do you think it's going to get nerfed, and have you used it already? Do you think it's overpowered? Let me know in the comments. I'll probably have the C58 stat guide done tomorrow, so look out for that. But that's the video. If you enjoyed it or has helped you in any way, let me know by leaving a like. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. And if you want to make sure that you never miss another video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.